You take a bite of warm bread. It is the ultimate symbolization. But imagine if your ancestors never planted that first seed of wheat. Would you actually be living a happier, healthier, and freer life right now? To answer that, look at your current life. You wake up to a blaring alarm. You commute through heavy traffic to sit under fluorescent lights. You will spend roughly 90,000 hours of your life working at a job. You call this normal. For 99% of human history, the concept of a job simply did not exist. Your ancestors never punched a clock or paid rent. Picture yourself 300,000 years ago. You wake up on the open savanna when your body is naturally ready. No alarms, no schedules. Your modern counterpart is already stressed, drinking a third cup of coffee to stay awake. If you didn't have to work 8 hours a day to pay for food and shelter, how did you survive? What did you do? Modern society assumes that before agriculture, your life was a desperate, miserable struggle for survival. This means you had everything you needed without having to hoard anything. You were wealthy in the most valuable currency of all, free time. Studies on modern foraging groups, like the Jushuanzi, show they only spend about 15 to 20 hours a week actively finding food. That is a 15-hour work week. The rest of your time was spent resting, playing, making art, or simply gossiping with your tribe around a fire. Look back at your modern self, exhausted after a 40-hour work week, eating a quick sandwich at your desk. Who is actually the primitive one here? You might think this easy life was just a stroke of luck, but this leisure time was a highly successful evolutionary strategy. Let's see how. To survive without a job, you didn't rely on a single paycheck or a single crop. You were a master botanist and a skilled tracker. Anthropologist Richard Lee studied modern foraging groups in the 1960s. He found that even in harsh deserts, your prehistoric menu was incredibly diverse. You consumed dozens of different plants. Compare that to your modern self. You probably eat the exact same wheat-based meals every single day. Bread for breakfast, pasta for dinner.
Sigh.
This diversity made you practically invincible. If a drought hit the savanna, you simply moved to a new valley or switched to different wild foods. In your ancient tribe of about 30 to 5th individuals, survival meant absolute cooperation. Everyone relied on everyone's. There were no bosses, no prehistoric billionaires. If a hunter became too arrogant, the tribe used a tactic called insulting the meat to keep his ego in check, and hoarding resources was not just considered weird, it was seen as a direct threat to the group. You survived by giving, not by keeping. Look at your modern world now. You sit in a tiny apartment stressing over bills, while a few individuals hoard more wealth than entire nations. Your ancient body and brain evolved for that prehistoric balance. The fossil record clearly proves this. Skeletons of early hunter-gatherers, you were arguably living in a golden age of human health and freedom. You owned nothing, but the entire world belonged to you. It was a highly successful evolutionary strategy that lasted hundreds of thousands of years. So, why on earth did you decide to give it up? You didn't choose to give it up overnight. It was a slow, invisible trap. Around 12,000 years ago, the Earth's climate suddenly stabilized. You found a patch of wild wheat. Instead of just gathering it, you decided to plant a few seeds to make next year a little easier. This was the birth of agriculture. It seemed like a brilliant idea. Predictable food meant you didn't have to constantly migrate across the savanna anymore. But scientist Jared Diamond famously called this shift the worst mistake in the history of the human race. Let's look at what actually happened to your physical body when you became a farmer. It was nothing short of a biological and health disaster. In 1984, researchers Cohen and Armalagos analyzed ancient skeletons. They compared health. The results were undeniable. When your ancestors started farming, their average height dropped significantly. They literally traded a highly diverse menu of hundreds of wild plants and meats for a monotonous diet almost entirely made of wheat and starchy grains. This massive spike in simple carbohydrates completely ruined your teeth. For the first time in human history, painful dental cavity. Every time you sit in a dentist's chair, you are paying the ongoing price of the agricultural revolution. But bad teeth and shrinking bones were only the beginning. Farming forced you to stay in one place, building increasingly crowded, and for the very first time you were living shoulder to shoulder with thousands of people, and directly alongside your newly domesticated animals like pigs and cows. This close proximity created a brand new nightmare. Deadly infectious diseases like smallpox and the flu mutate. Devastating epidemics were born. And because you could no longer easily pack up and walk away, these terrible diseases ripped entirely. Your relaxing 15-hour work week was completely destroyed. You were now breaking your back in the fields from sunrise to setting. Eventually, the brutal work did produce one thing your ancestors never had before. This grain surplus created a brand new and terrifying problem for your society: the fear of losing it. Stored food can be stolen. Suddenly, you had something to lose. This was the exact moment the concept of private property was officially born. On the savannah, the world belonged to everyone. Now, land was divided by invisible lines. If you didn't own land, you had to serve. To protect the grain and the land, your villages built walls. To manage the walls and the food, you needed... This is when your fiercely egalitarian society completely shattered. Those who controlled the surplus grain, anthropologists point out that the social hierarchy we see today started right here. You went from a free, equal hunter to a lowly peasant. Look at your modern life. The staggering wealth inequality is a direct continuation of this. But property and hierarchy brought an even darker invention. When land and stored food became the ultimate prize, early farmers organized massive, systemic campaigns to slaughter neighbors and steal their highly valuable fertile land. The archaeological record is grim. Skeletons from early agricultural, you were completely trapped. If a warlord attacked or a famine hit, you couldn't just walk away into the forest like your ancestors did. Because you had lost the knowledge of how to forage, you were entirely dependent on this one fragile system, and your population was exploding. Instead, the wheat plant successfully domesticated us. It forced our species to break our backs clearing rocks and carrying water just to help it multiply. Evolutionary biologists call this phenomenon an evolutionary mismatch. You are trapped in a modern concrete cage. Your deep DNA has barely changed in the 12,000 years since agriculture began. Take your diet. You are biologically programmed to crave sugar and fat because they were rare and valuable in the ancient wild. Or look at your stress. Ancient stress was a short burst of adrenaline to escape a predator. Today, your stress is a constant low-level hum about rent, emails, and social media. Your ancient nervous system was never built for this. And what about loneliness? For hundreds of thousands of years, you lived in a tightly knit tribe of around 150 people. Today, you can be surrounded by millions of strangers in a massive city, yet feel more isolated and depressed than any ancient human ever did. Agriculture allowed our species to multiply into the billions and build incredible modern technologies. As a collective species, but as historian Harari points out, the evolutionary success of a species does not guarantee the happiness or health of the individual living inside it. The human population skyrocketed, but the average person's life became significantly harder, more stressful. You are the ultimate product of that profound trade-off. You hold the entire world's knowledge in your pocket, but your mind is exhausted. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed by the crushing pressure of the modern daily grind, remember this fundamental truth about your own biology and history. It is not your fault. You are simply a prehistoric ape desperately trying to navigate a bizarre world. You look at that bite of bread again. It built your cities and gave you your smartphone.